here's a question. Who needs biblical counseling?
So here's a question. Who doesn't need biblical
counseling? Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, maybe that's a better question. What do you think?
If we really, narrowly define biblical counseling to, specific problems, depression, lust, something. Okay, then maybe not everybody needs it. But my experience has been that if it's like Lee says, life-touching life, if it's, discipleship, focus perhaps on a difficult, thorny sin issue, then to me, I don't see who wouldn't need biblical counseling.
Yeah, that's right. And so it probably ties in a little bit with how you define what biblical counseling actually is, right? Yeah, what do you think?
Right. And when I think of biblical counseling on that sort of larger scale, really not just that specific office experience, but even what we do with ourselves personally, the scripture coming to bear on our lives. And I would say that is everybody, even people who are not yet followers of Christ. This book is meant for all of us, and we want to learn how to do well at bringing this book into the issues of life on a daily basis. Yeah, everybody's.
Do you think that there's a bit of a stigma in the church about biblical counseling? That's kind of for people that have some real sin issues, and do you think that maybe there's even some kind of shame, some embarrassment about, hey, maybe I should? What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah? I think it's not natural for us to share our struggles. That may be more of a Canadian problem than it is others, I think. But yeah, we're very private about that. So even to share it in a small group or to go to actually meet with somebody, I think you're right. There is a stigma. We're individualistic. That's not Canadian. That would be definitely Western. We think we can do it by ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think, Herb?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the part of the challenge with counseling too is that I think in the church we're more accustomed to gossiping about gossiping about problems than we're actually dealing with problems, right? So, I've had situations where people say, look, I'm not coming for counseling because if I come for counseling, then so-and-so's going to know, and they're going to tell, Billy down the street, and then Susie's going to find out, and that's going to be talked about. So people are, I'll just tough it out, that rugged sort of, I got this, I can handle this. So, yeah, I see that a lot in the church. And it's not just, they don't understand what counseling is. It's other problems in the church, like gossip, are detracting or pulling people back where they don't want to get open, share, be vulnerable, and talk about what's going on in their life. So, absolutely, that's a problem. Yeah, and I don't know if part of it is in my church. I've tried to do what Boltman, I think, who was a theological liberal, talks about demystifying the New Testament. So, and I'm not into that, but I do. What I like to talk about is demystifying biblical counseling. So I try to, whenever I say the word biblical counseling, I try to tack in or discipleship because discipleship, that's a lot more church lingo. People get that. Biblical counseling, people aren't sure if are you a psychotherapist? Are you going to prescribe meds? Are you going to tell me not to take my meds? Like what? So there's a little bit of a uncertainty about exactly what that is in the church. So as long as I sort of demystify, no, it's not some spooky, weird kind of therapeutic thing. We're going to talk. We're going to open the scriptures. We're going to study the word together. We're going to talk about the problems that you're having. We're going to try to find scriptures that both apply, that connect you to what God may be doing in your life. And okay. And I find people who've come to it, who've sat and done counseling, have gone, oh, that was really good. Like they were so surprised about it. I didn't know that was like that.
Yeah. Amen.
I've often experienced that people, you can tell when they're coming through the door the first time. Real fear. And once they've, sat and talked with you for an hour, it's all dissipated. It's like, okay, this is not what I was thinking was going to be.
Yeah, I had a lady come with her husband, and her husband had to coax her into the room, and he sat with her. And she was so timid and fearful. And after we spent an hour, she had relaxed, her body language had changed. And then the next time, she was like right in the office talking, laughing. I thought, oh, okay, she sees that this is not some, I don't know what she thought I was going to do. When she was in my office and the Bible was open and we were just talking, it was like, oh.
I've had people say to me, do I have to lay down?
Right, yeah, that's true.
No, but it's my couch.
Do you have
If
a
you want
couch
to, you
there?
can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, couch floor, whatever it is. So how, like, so I love what you just said about demystifying biblical counseling and trying to communicate to the church what biblical counseling is. So how do we do that? How do we communicate what biblical counseling is to the church? What do you think?
You form a coalition and you start talking about it, and then you try to connect.
That's a great
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
You just need to keep talking about it. Like, I ended up entering biblical counseling out of need. So I was pastoring a church, and people were coming to me with problems. They would say, Pastor, I'm struggling with depression. I mean, that's fairly common. I don't know what to do. And I was sitting with my Bible thinking, I don't really know what to do either. But I'll tell you what, somebody has to know. So I started going on websites, Googling subjects, finding books, reading books. Then I'd say, hey, I'm reading this. This has got to be helpful for somebody who's struggling with this. So we start. Then I would find out about a conference. Then I found out about CCF. Then I found out about the BCTC. So I started going to these things. It was totally need generated in my church. People were struggling and wanted to help them. So how do I help them? And then I got connected to resources. God providentially directed all those steps, because I could have ended up way off in who knows what kind of weirdness.
Right.
But I was just totally a need thing. I got to follow, how do I help people who are struggling and hurting? So it wasn't some kind of weird, I had to have years of training to be able to understand how to do this.
Yeah. What would you say, Betty Ann, just in terms of to the local church, how do we demystify biblical counseling?
Yeah, personally, it's been one life at a time. And as I meet with somebody and God moves in their lives and they're given hope and empowered to walk with Him, and they talk about it, and then their friends come.
Right.
Yeah, so that's been my experience at this point, because we don't have a lot of exposure here. So there's not a lot of opportunity for people to be exposed in general. It's just been one life at a time.
One life at a time, and people start to talk, and
yeah.
that's great. That's great. Yeah, thanks, guys.